Ladies and gentlemen, many medical professionals, because of the pandemic, are walking away. Unfortunately, medical school did not prepare these doctors and nurses for a pandemic. They assumed those kind of things happened elsewhere and not here in America. Well, that was a big mistake, and medical school is very expensive. So these folks, they are working shifts, barely get a break, and they are working long, long hours. Now, I've done some stories in the past. Doctors are leaving and relocating to other countries, nurses are leaving, and that's why it's shorthanded in some parts of the country, worse than others. And I can just see this becoming worse as we get into 2021. And this thing hasn't even began to explode. And people are thinking, okay, we're at full capacity. Remember, we still have some more holidays to get through. And no matter how much you tell people to stay in, they're not going to do it. We already seen that from past holidays. They're going to travel and do whatever they want. And then you're going to have another big surge at the end of December leading into January. I mean, it's unavoidable, and they'll be doing their little New Year's parties and celebrations, so that'll be another surge. So my hearts go out to these doctors and nurses because I know they are woe out for real. All right, I have some audio I want you to listen to.
This is Marketplace. I'm Kai Rizdal. This has been a terrible year for huge chunks of this economy, right? Most terrible, though, for the nurses and doctors and medical professionals working long hours against long odds against this virus, always with the fear that they might get sick themselves. But almost every other doctor and nurse, the ones not on the front lines of pandemic care, has been dealing with the opposite situation, a huge drop in business. And the result, as Marketplace's Samantha Fields reports, is that a lot of them are thinking about leaving the business.
Dr. Ted Mazer felt burned out before the pandemic. At 62, the business of running his ear, nose, and throat practice and the stress of fighting with insurance companies was getting to him. And COVID just made it all worse.
The financial strains of dealing with COVID with a dramatic drop in practice volume, with the loss of surgeries during the initial outbreak, patients not wanting to come in.
That was hard financially. The volume of patients Mazer was seeing dropped by 75%, which has a lot to do with the fact that his specialty is otolaryngology.
It's a surgical specialty that looks into dark orifices like noses and ears and deep down throats,
which you really have to do in person. Mazer did some telehealth, but well into the summer, business was still down 40 or 50%.
I finally decided that we couldn't continue to do what we were doing with a very opaque future for what would happen if we even tried to make it to the end of the year.
In September, Mazer closed his practice for good and retired from medicine a couple years earlier than he'd planned. 8% of doctors have closed their practices because of COVID, according to a survey from the nonprofit Physicians Foundation. That translates to about 16,000 fewer practices nationwide. And nearly a quarter of doctors are considering retiring early, according to another survey from Medscape.
It is at risk of becoming an enormous issue.
Dr. Joseph Valenti is on the board of the Physicians Foundation and a gynecologist in Denton, Texas. He says the pandemic is putting doctors under enormous strain.
They're feeling burned out from the financial aspect. They're feeling burned out from the lack of people believing in science aspect.
It feels like the water I was swimming in has turned into molasses.
Dr. Monique Child is a pediatrician in Anchorage, Alaska, and she says almost everything about being a doctor is harder and slower and more exhausting right now, especially not having answers to so many of the questions her patients ask about COVID.
After 20 years in the field, I feel like with most questions that a new parent might have, I have answers. And in this case, I have a lack of answers and even basic answers.
On top of that, there are what she calls all the normal hassles of a broken healthcare system, which
have become more than can be managed in the midst of a pandemic. And it's demoralizing.
Child can't see herself leaving her patients in the middle of the pandemic, but after, she's planning to take time off.
And maybe take some of that time to think about, like, do I want to go find a different career?
Which is something she says she never thought before. Dr. Joseph Valenti, the gynecologist in Texas, is worried about what will happen if too many doctors hit that point.
We cannot turn out doctors quickly. It's not something we can just crank up the assembly line for, because not only do we have a projected shortage of doctors, but we don't have enough residency slots to train them, even if you graduated them from medical school.
And that, Valenti says, could have major implications for patients and the healthcare system as a whole. I'm Samantha Fields for Marketplace.
You know, what's going on is no joke. And if medical professionals leave on top of the surge and everything that's going on in this country, and COVID still going up, this is going to be another major problem, and it will ultimately implode the healthcare system in America. So it's almost like each day America is dangling by a thread. And eventually that thread is going to break. And like I said, they are trying to act like this vaccine is going to be the be all of saving the country. And no such thing is going to happen. It's not going to happen. You're hearing about all the complications with people taking the shot. I mean, it's already got a bad omen around it. The first day they were administering shots, 2 nurses got sick, had adverse effects. And then they start putting out the list of, okay, these are the people that can't take the shot. And it's gone downhill from there. They just don't want to admit it. But every time something happens, oh, you should still get the shot. People are not listening, but I think they will get the picture when it goes public and they don't get the turnout they're looking for. Reality will have to set in. They're not going to have a choice. So, y'all, please tell me what you think. I'm not surprised that these doctors are burnt out. Something's got to give. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace, family.